This episode is brought to you by redpillthreads.com. They are a new brand geared toward fueling the anti-woke movement. They have some hilarious and edgy designs, which I cannot show you on YouTube because I will get my channel demonetized. So you're going to have to check out redpillthreads.com for yourself. These hoodies, they are some of the warmest and softest I have ever worn, and the shirts, they fit great and are super comfortable. So if you want to take a stand against cancel culture and donate to some amazing nonprofits, this is the company for you. 20% of Red Pill Threads proceeds go towards rotating charities aimed at combating child trafficking and helping people who have been injured by the pharmaceutical industry. So stop supporting large corporations and start wearing clothes from a small business with a big message. Check out redpillthreads.com today.
Microsoft tried to control the internet, guys. Like, we were not that far off. They went all in on trying to control the internet in the early days and making a private internet. They might have succeeded. And they were kind of trying the same thing here. And ironically, it's effectively the same company. OpenAI might as well be Microsoft. They're trying the same thing of trying to control the AI market. And I'm really pleased to see the vigorous competition that's happening here. Like, I think it's awesome. It's great for everyone.
All right, dude, we're rolling. My buddy Jim, episode 181, Convos in the Pedicab. You run a really based AI company.
Yeah, what's up, guys? My name's Jim. I'm the founder and CEO of Cascader. We build privacy-focused and Bitcoin payable AI systems. So we kind of see the writing on the wall that a lot of these LLMs are going to be commoditized, but there's a lot of opportunity to increase productivity, improve wealth, but do it in a way that's aligned with our values of privacy, human liberty.
How do you guys do that, and how does this like differentiate from like a Chat GPT or from even Grok or even from going on Brave and using AI to search on Brave for like basic questions?
Sure. So I would say those systems, most of them are built by people that create what are called foundation models. In other words, they're tuning the neural nets and the big systems to create the foundation LLM models. The way I see those, and that's been kind of validated, is those are kind of like steel beams. They're a commodity that you use to build other things. So I'm farther upstream of the value chain of where we're trying to build other applications on top of that. So a great example of that would be I created an application called pullthatupjamie.ai, and that allows you to search the web. It uses open source search meta search engines to feed the search engine to your choice of LLM. It could be any LLM. They're interchangeable commodities. And now you can kind of have the, something like a Perplexity, which is closed source, but now you have our thing that's open source and it's Bitcoin payable, so you don't have to dox your identity while you're doing it. All that stuff stays with you.
Because when I look at it, it does show there is a form to fill out your name and address when you write that out.
You're talking about my application.
Yeah.
That's if you pay with credit card. I prefer you pay with Bitcoin if you can. That's for people that just haven't made the leap yet.
Okay.
You can review our code and audit it. None of that information gets logged at any point. It's just checked to make sure that we're not getting stiffed.
Okay.
Because we got to make a sustainable business model.
And so how does that exactly work? Like, what are the perks of a membership?
Well, so for that membership, you get access to all of our applications. Honestly, we're not charging enough. There's tons of people that have been with us since the beginning, and they're like, yeah, when this first started, I was pretty stoked about it, but now it's a friggin' steal because we've got a bunch of different modules. So as you pointed out, we have a Chat GPT proxy where you can use Chat GPT anonymously, but just pay your membership through us. We have the ability to transcribe podcasts, to create summaries, create blog posts based on them. We have the ability to search podcast clips.
If I were to like theoretically paste in RFK's confirmation hearing, are you guys able to summarize the confirmation hearing if I paste like the 5-hour-long video of RFK's confirmation hearing? Or are you guys
Yes. Yes.
So you're there.
Yes.
That's amazing because no other AI model could do that.
I wouldn't say no other model can do that. We just kind of focused on the UX
cannot do that.
and staying close to. Yeah, I think they wouldn't be able to do that. Now, when you start getting to 5 hours, that's challenging. I think we have some work to do to make it to make it airtight, but it will definitly give you a meaningful result.
But like, let's say hypothetically,
unlike Chat GPT, which wouldn't even try probably.
Then let's say, do you ever? I assume you like listen to the Davos meetings, right? sometimes?
Once in a while,
Okay.
yeah.
Like, because I have an hour drive home. Like, I have an hour drive to and from home. And so there are times when, like, especially during when the World Economic Forum gathers, I'll listen to, like, Klaus Schwab, or I'll listen to, like, Christine Lagarde, or I'll listen to, like, these, like, tyrants at the EU give these speeches where they're predicting this dystopian future that they're trying to lay out for us using woke language as a guise for it. And I'll listen to these whole things, and it is some of the most boring, insufferable thing to listen to, right? You really have to train your brain to, like, actually listen to this and pay attention because of how boring and mundane it is. If I were to paste the address onto Pull It Up Jamie, right, or onto one of your applications, would it be able to actually summarize the contents of that video?
Yeah, so the way it works is there's really 3 options. The first option is you already have it in, like, a remote storage bucket, like on, like, this podcast is in Anchor or wherever it is. So you're able to pull those in, but then you're also able to load up local files. I used to have the ability to do YouTube stuff. They removed that because all these companies are playing defense. They don't want LLMs. They don't want, like, any kind of open access.
Use YouTube, right?
You can't use YouTube anymore because they shut it down. And right, yeah, because they're playing defense. But I do have it so that, like, the RSS feed, so, like, this podcast and all your other podcasts are available.
So, like,
yeah, if it's a podcast, it's already available.
Okay, but then
if you have the file on your machine, you can upload it and it'll work.
Okay, but I can't, like, type in that. I can't paste the YouTube speech from Davos.
I mean, that's not a technical problem so much as it's a legal problem,
From
and
YouTube,
it's them playing defense with the technology. If I had my druthers, everything would be open everywhere all the time. But there's a lot of people that are trying to be middlemen and rent seekers.
No, I understand that. And you could probably always use Rumble or something else to kind of transcribe it.
Rumble needs an API. I don't think they're there yet. I think they would be open to this type of idea. We need to lobby them.
Dude, they're buying Bitcoin now.
Yeah, I think they'd be I love that. I think they're a great company. I think they're probably more focused on the culture side. I think there's a couple things they might be able to tweak on the tech side that would make it more amenable to this type of stuff. And they could probably prove that they're superior to YouTube by, making, like, almost like an app store and, like, having an open set of AI things. Like, I would love to work with a company like that.
Yeah, I think it's very primitive right now with where they're at. They're, like, in the infantile stages, because even when you, like, look at the interface and just even uploading videos to Rumble, it's kind of like a crapshoot to do when you're on your phone versus, like, I have to, like, get to my desktop, download the video off YouTube, and then upload it to Rumble from a computer instead of just uploading, like, a longer video to my phone. But it's still, like, it's still a really good platform. It's still a lot better than YouTube. You still get a lot more out of going on Rumble than you ever would on YouTube.
This stuff is hard. Don't take what I just said to be like an indictment of them. This stuff's hard, and it takes a long time. We take this for granted because we just look at pretty moving pictures on our phones or laptops and take it for granted. But there's a lot of engineering effort that goes into stuff like this, and it's not trivial. I'm really pleased to see with what they're doing and hope to see them continue to evolve.
Okay.
And engage people like me and others that are value aligned, that are willing to help them and create win-win.
Okay. What do you say to people who are just adamantly against the use of AI and think that it's just going to bring about digital enslavement?
I think they have their hearts in the right place and that they are right to be skeptical, but I think that's the reason why you need people like us and like others that are liberty focused in on this. I kind of see it as sort of like the Space Force of the fight for liberty. We need to know how these tools work because at the end of the day, they're just, the LLM, the core of a lot of this stuff, they're just autocorrect on steroids. And it's a lot of, all this stuff is fractal. It's little pieces that you take and put together over and over again iteratively and create something better with it. And DeepSeek just proved that with the model that they ran. They did some really interesting things with the way they trained it, but fundamentally speaking, they didn't invent a totally new module. They just applied them in a very clever way to make a better model.
Yes, so that's what I kind of wanted to bring up. What is the difference? And I want you to explain this to me like I wear a mask alone to drive my car. What is the difference between DeepSeek and Chat GPT?
I think there are numerous differences, and some of this, I'm not intimately familiar with like every single detail of the new model. It's pretty new, but I think they are somewhat comparable in terms of capabilities, but DeepSeek is actually open source. So what that means is all of these LLMs, what they are at their core are weights. They're systems of equations that take you from an input to an output. So they're just numbers at the end of the day. So how you get to those numbers is the magic. How do you get the correct weights to get the correct input output formula, right? That's the hard part. And they did a really good job of, they trained a really good what's called reasoning model called V0, and then they used that to create synthetic data. So instead of having to have a million Chinese people like create scenarios of problem solution, instead they were able to create that synthetically in what is obviously a very high quality way in order to train that. Now, could they have used somehow like ripped off OpenAI or other people? I think it's totally possible, but I do think there's a lot of copium coming out of Silicon Valley that they really just got ended around by people that used resources more efficiently than them.
Okay, but do you trust a model coming out of China to actually be open source?
Yeah, because it's just a system of equations. They're following a formula. Now, I wouldn't trust it to answer questions about Tiananmen Square. There's things in there that it might be wrong about, but I also think that fundamentally it's a system of equations. Like, there's not really much else to it. Like, it's if you sandbox the thing correctly, then you can run secure compute on it. Like, I think there should be more scrutiny put on it just in case there's clever tricks being played, but fundamentally speaking, it's available on Hugging Face. Like, it's not, I wouldn't trust their API. Like, I wouldn't ask it a question and expect the Chinese government to not log that. I think that's where the danger comes in. But if you take it and run it on your own machine, like, the risk is much, much lower. And as time goes on and more people are able to look at it with a critical eye,
but it's not like, is it like,
much safer to
so
use.
I'm a little worried about installing that on my phone just because, I don't want it to be like TikTok where like the CCP is just going to get all of my data.
I wouldn't install it on your phone. What I would do is I would take the models and then run it on your own machine at home. And there's proof that you can do this for like very cheaply. You can run the full model for 6,000. If you run a pared down version of it, you can run it for like a few thousand, maybe even
like
less.
A year, or for what?
Yeah, and so like there's people like me, there's people like Tony at Open Secret who's doing really great work with the privacy angle of doing end-to-end encryption. To where he'll be able to run it. And the reason why it'd be desirable to run it is because they claim that they reduce the fixed cost of training, which I could debate. I bet you they're embellishing that and cooking books. But the truth is, if they spent 10 times more of what OpenAI did, but they got the variable cost of the tokens much lower, and those tokens are, that token cost is replicated on other people's hardware, like, that's an incredible innovation. And that's a win for everybody that isn't OpenAI, that isn't a Silicon Valley bro. Because that means that people like me that use the AI steel beams that I'm talking about, it just got much cheaper. It just got much cheaper for me to build you a skyscraper.
So it's one of those things where it's, just to put it in like plain English, it's one of those things that's bad for NVIDIA.
Yes.
It's probably bad for the Mag 7.
Yeah.
But it's really good for startups and people like you because now you have a whole new model to build off of and make a better AI infrastructure system.
Yeah, exactly. And it's open source, so I can run it on my own secure compute behind encryption to where, like, it doesn't even know who you are. The danger is if you download the DeepSeek app and you're asking it sensitive things, they're subject to the whims of the Chinese government. So you are effectively giving up your data to the Chinese government. So I would say be careful about that, but keep your eye out for cool people like me, cool people like the people at Open Secret, cool people, at Hugging Face that are running these models on their hardware where they're not subject to the Chinese government, or they are using good encryption to protect you.
But that's a whole nother thing that a lot of people are not, myself included, need to do a lot of learning in terms of knowing how to do that. And there's a big educational gap in that.
That's fair, but there's, like, once again, if you use my application and you pay in Bitcoin and you have a VPN, there's really no way for me to know who you are.
So I could do that I could run the DeepSeek application on Cascader?
I don't have an API yet, but we're working on it.
So that's pretty cool.
Once it's up, then yeah, you're going to get super cheap AI tokens, dirt cheap, like 1/20th the cost of OpenAI with anonymity. Like, you marry those two things together and that's killer. And so to me, this just illustrates like the superiority of the open source model, where they're building on the shoulders of giants, of open source people.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That does make sense. How do you think it's going to affect Bitcoin mining?
I don't know how it's going to affect Bitcoin mining. I guess maybe it because in a way it makes Bitcoin, it reduces the demand on compute, so it makes it a little cheaper to mine, but it also affects the capital expenditures to where you don't have the dual use capability as much. Like if it really does manifest that it is indeed 1/20th the price, and the GPUs aren't nearly as desirable.
Do you think that would? I mean, because if it becomes cheap, look, I could be wrong on this, but if it becomes cheaper to mine Bitcoin, right, and it requires less energy, I see a couple things happening. I see one, I could see like the mining stocks pumping to the moon, at least temporarily, because they're spending less money and they're going to have more Bitcoin and they're going to have better balance sheets and stuff like that. But I also could potentially see like maybe a dip in the price of Bitcoin, because if it's going to be cheaper to produce and if you're going to expend less energy, then in the short term, people might actually pay less money per Bitcoin, or people would be willing to sell Bitcoin for less amount of money.
So this is complex. This is why people that are trained economists and traders go in, and that's not my expertise. I'm just looking at first principles.
Yeah.
But one thing you have to keep in mind is that's absent from your analysis is the difficulty adjustment. So if I don't think it's gonna become cheaper to mine Bitcoin because of the AI revolution. What would happen is it would change the economics of co-locating AI and Bitcoin miners, and I don't know how that affects things, because there's a lot of things at play. There's the fact that if they're co-locating, they're raising funds and getting loans based on this dual use capability. But if half of that collapses, if the AI side collapses, then that may make it harder to repay their loans. I don't know, because there's different assumptions. I'm not in that business, so I don't feel comfortable making confident assertions. But like in the case of, suppose Bitcoin mining became 10 times more efficient or 20 times more efficient like AI did, what would happen is people would mine more Bitcoin, and then the difficulty adjustment would get higher.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, you're right. And also it might actually decentralize the mining process too, because it becomes a little bit easier to mine. More people will just start mining, and then the centralization risk might wind up actually.
I think it would decentralize mining, because now there's less of an incentive for you to co-locate AI and Bitcoin miners and get all these big energy contracts. Now that AI use case is weakened by the fact that it's not as profitable, then maybe that's a factor.
Which makes sense, and it preserves like the privacy function of Bitcoin and everything else like that.
I prefer that people pleb mine. I don't want to see the world turn into one big mining hub.
No, that's what I'm saying, and AI does that. It also explains why the Biden administration wanted to have a total monopoly on AI to avoid what we just talked about from happening.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, I think gladly cooler heads prevailed. I really respect Mark Andreessen, who was an OG open source guy, and I've been saying this for a while, and I think this probably resonates with him too, that back to his days making the first browsers, that Microsoft tried to control the internet, guys. Like, we were not that far off. They went all in on trying to control the internet in the early days and making a private internet. They might have succeeded, and they were kind of trying the same thing here. And ironically, it's effectively the same company. OpenAI might as well be Microsoft. They're trying the same thing of trying to control the AI market. And I'm really pleased to see the vigorous competition that's happening here. Like, I think it's awesome. It's great for everyone.
Yeah. No, I like it. It's weird saying this, but I'm actually like strangely optimistic about where our country's going to be in the next couple of years.
How so?
I think that like we have turned. I mean, I think there's a lot of work to do, but I think we have turned a corner in preserving and enhancing the freedoms that the United States was founded on.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I'm a big First Amendment guy, Fourth Amendment guy. Fifth Amendment guy. Our company has built legal tech applications that make the process more cost effective, more fair, more transparent. So that's the Sixth Amendment right there. So you're talking my language, and I think we do need to get back to just fundamental principles of what this country is founded on.
Like,
so I'm happy to see it.
I think there's concerns, but I think like a lot of people, everybody's like, I think a lot of people who are on the right, what I've noticed is that they're so used to being resisting, and they're so used to being pissed off activists that they don't know what to do now that they're like the established, now that their ideas are mainstream ideas. And I think that a lot of people just, it becomes almost a shock when you're like, wait a minute, like I'm the establishment now, like my ideas are mainstream normal ideas. Whereas before, like you were pushing up to get your ideas to the mainstream, and all of a sudden now, like once you get your ideas to become mainstream, a lot of people just don't know what to do, and they just become crazier and crazier and crazier and kind of lose the plot. And one of the things that people talk about is that like Trump is like a Trojan horse to kind of turn America into a digital mass surveillance prison. And they say all these things, and they use the digitization and the Peter Thiel connection and the PayPal mafia and all this other stuff, which has validity. But then you also have things like, there was a ban on mixers that the Biden administration had, and then Trump literally reversed the ban on mixers.
Like mixers of
like mixing technology for funds when you send transactions.
Okay, yeah.
Like
Bitcoin
cash
mixers.
And yeah.
I thought you were talking about like parties or something.
No, I meant like the Bitcoin mixers.
Okay.
And I feel like, stuff like that, or the fact that they're going to try that they're going to get a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and the fact that there's, the idea of owning Bitcoin is becoming a mainstream talking point now at the Federal Reserve. You're inviting podcasters. Like, I could theoretically get a press pass to the White House.
I'd love to see it, man.
Yeah, like the fact that this is happening does, freeing Ross Albright, all of this is like really good. And it's almost like a shock to actually say, wait a minute, is the government actually doing the right thing? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good points in there. I mean, I think first thing that comes to mind is, now you're going from the phase of where you're the resistance to where you're the leadership. And I think it's incumbent on the people in power now to lead with magnanimity and, sound leadership and sound empathy too. Like, you can't just turn into what you hate. So I think that's important. And then also just the turning tide that you're talking about, Bitcoin mixers and stuff. Like, I know people that are in, war-torn countries that rely on this stuff every day. I know people that are attorneys overseas that have been targeted by authoritarian regimes that rely on Bitcoin for, bank of last resort, and also for the privacy it provides from being attacked by authoritarian regimes. So I think even left-wing people that empathize with those types of values need to consider that Bitcoin's for everyone. It's not just a right-wing issue. It's not just a tech bro issue. It really is the people's money. It's not.
I agree. I think that because of how insane the political left has gotten, once people start adopting those viewpoints, they quickly become right-wing because they realize that the left no longer wants to listen to them.
I'm seeing some positive changes. I hope that continues, but I agree with you. That's a problem.
It's a big problem. I think that when you look at even the confirmation hearings, right? And we're not going to talk too much about politics, so if you want to change the subject at any point, you can always say so. But even the confirmation hearings, like you have RFK, who is considered Democrat royalty, who wants to get chemicals out of our food, and who wants to make sure that the medications that we give to children are actually safe and effective to reduce the chronic disease epidemic and actually fix our mental health crisis, which is very obviously apparent in America. The fact that not a single Democrat is going to vote to confirm Kennedy, it tells you everything that you need to know about where the Democratic Party is. And in order to actually have like a competent two-party system, I'm hoping to God that you'll have a wave of Democrats that'll start embracing a lot of what Kennedy and Tulsi have been talking about for years, and they take the Democrat Party in a new direction. Because I think that's another component. That's a very understated component as to how we preserve what our country is. Because if we don't have that, then the right wing just takes over everything, and if unchecked power creates authoritarian corruption.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that a lot of the stuff that RFK is talking about shouldn't be too controversial. I mean, people have a problem with this vaccine thing. I don't even really want to talk about that, but just the getting poison out of our food. I mean, there's a lot of junk in our food supply that should not be there, and a lot of it's just for corporations to cut costs. And I don't blame the Democrats themselves. I think there's just too much money in politics to the point where they think it's a good idea to, defend a lot of these practices that are going on in the food supply and the pharmaceutical industry. And, the numbers speak for themselves. You go, the pictures speak for themselves. If you go look at picture of people at the beach in 1970 versus the people now. There's a night and day difference, and there's obviously something wrong. If you even just look at people in other countries, they look much healthier, and I think there's something to be said for that. I think it's fair to question, is it really just self-control? Is it really just that, Americans are all, hedonist and eating improperly, or is there something else going on with the food supply? I think there's probably a combination there, but I think, we got to ask the question, are we metabolically compromising children? I think we probably are with a lot of the seed oil stuff and the other problems with our food supply.
I agree. I think it's a huge issue. And I think that the more the internet is becoming democratized, and the more you're actually allowing true free speech online, which Elon, for the most part, is doing a very good job with. Right? Yep. For a centralized platform, he's doing a pretty good job at allowing free speech for running a centralized platform. And I think that the more people become aware of why things are the way they are, the harder it is for these people to fully control that narrative, and that it might not be immediate, but it will lead us down a path of becoming a healthier, more well-adjusted, prospering society.
Yeah. Have you ever talked to Matthew Lyshak?
I met him, but I never had a full discussion with him.
Yeah,
but he wrote Fiat Food.
Yeah, Fiat Food. So that's where I'm getting a lot of this stuff, and once again, he's a well-credentialed New York Times journalist. He's kind of like a Kennedy independent type too, yeah. I would say, and he brings the receipts for all this stuff. There's a weird group of people that of corporations, government, and religious zealots that teamed up to mess with the food supply, and we're reaping the consequences of that. So when people look at inflation on a piece of paper, they say, oh, it's 2% inflation, but they don't count the fact that now you're eating a different piece of meat that's lower grade or it's got more junk in it.
Yeah, you're cooking with engine lubricant.
Right. And so that's a big problem. And I hope to see people like him, level-headed, rational guy that brings the receipts. I hope to see those types of heads prevail and just persuade people and say, hey, look, persuade those 47 Democrats. Hey, look, guys, I get that there's a party line here, but really consider that we could do a lot of good for the American people by just getting back to basics of nutrition and science for the public. And the people that are hurt the most are people that are in inner cities. They're in food deserts, and they're stuck eating whatever garbage Coca-Cola decides to put in their food, and that's horrible. And how can you possibly think clearly if you're not able to eat good food like that? That breaks my heart, and I really hope that changes.
Yeah, and you know what it does? It perpetuates the poverty cycle.
Yeah.
Because if you can't think clearly, you're not going to make the types of decisions that allow you to actually build wealth intelligently, and then you wind up staying poor, and then you wind up being angry as a result of staying poor, and then you wind up blaming people like us for the reason as to why you're poor, instead of just taking a step back and realizing that all you got to do is make a few very simple changes.
Yeah, they're fiefdoms. It's feudalism in a way, and one thing that always amazes me is that no matter where humans go, what kind of social group they fall into, it seems like we always fall back on feudalism somehow. I've seen it happen in corporate America, where you have all of these different, VPs and lords, feuding with each other, trying to take each other's, serfs and fiefs. Same thing even happens in friend groups at times. I've seen things like that happen. And so the government and the country is no different. So I think we have to resist that urge and hope that more enlightened, more level-headed, more kind people prevail, and try to put that energy out in the world and try to make the world better.
No, I agree. And I think something like Bitcoin actually is how you restore those values. Because I think a big thing, a big reason for our culture deteriorating is the fact that our money supply is broken. And when the money is broken and your money has no value and you can't save, you're not going to be rewarded for engaging in pro-social behavior. You're rewarded for either spending or whoever's the best at spending, or whoever's the best at gambling is the one who winds up kind of getting rewarded.
Or becoming a middleman that doesn't add value and just sets yourself up in the middle. I mean, there's a lot of that going on too.
Well, and there's a lot of people like that work in our government, and a lot of those jobs are no longer going to exist anymore. And once those jobs no longer exist, you're going to have a whole new element to the class struggle.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that Bitcoin creates a pathway for peace and for prosperity by encouraging, as you said, pro-social behavior. I don't think humans are angels or not perfect, but I think you change the system one incentive at a time. And
I think that a lot of the people that we work with have no hope. I think I'm a very small minority. Hey, and Pergy could attest to this, right? I think that there's a very large majority of pedicab drivers who have no faith in the American dream. Is that Pergy? What do you think? You could talk.
Yeah.
All right.
He's giving us thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah. There are a lot of people that we work with are very much like that, or they're blaming Donald Trump for the fact that eggs are expensive, right? Or they're like blaming the patriarchy, or they're blaming capitalism for why they can't pay their rent, or everything is getting more expensive, and I better find a second or a third job and be a slave on a hamster wheel because rent is getting more expensive, and these corporations are just going to take advantage of us left and right, and then, but then at the same time, if you had just been buying Bitcoin, if you had just been incrementally buying Bitcoin for the past 5 years, you would have a whole different outlook on this stuff.
Yeah, I think this is almost biblical in a sense, right? You think about Cain and Abel, what happened. Cain resented Abel because he prospered and Cain did not, and was looking to blame him. And now that's not to say that the people that are struggling, it's all their fault. I think they are being exploited, but I think what's happening is the people that are exploiting them are pointing them to other people that are either neutral or trying to help them. Help the people that are exploited and say, hey, that's your enemy, and they're pitting us against each other when really, we need to just change the system and teach people how to fish versus giving them fish. Like, we got to just keep raising the bar, improving education, improving, just improving opportunities in general. And those things start to take care of themselves. But when you have these massive exploitative systems, you have all these lies and obfuscation that can hide behind over financialization and other junk and other weird government politics. That can muddy the waters and create a situation where you have the plebs fighting each other.
Yeah, well, it's basically it's like blaming immigrants or like trans ideology for the problems that we have, instead of realizing that the broken money that we are using is the cause of our immigration and cultural degradation.
Yeah,
if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, if you're not able to save for the future, it decivilises you. This is called time preference. So if you're high time preference, you'll chop down the tree to heat your family. Especially if you're in a wartime, right? Like, you're not planning for the future. But if you're low time preference, if you're able to save for the future, you have this cushion, as you said. If you save in a good asset like Bitcoin for 5 years, now you have a different outlook, and now you can think about, what do I really want out of life? How can I really contribute and put my best self forward and make the world better in a way that aligns with my values? That's the beauty of Bitcoin, and getting more and more people to that place, I think, is a better thing.
Yeah, I also noticed that Bitcoiners are a lot more calmer than fiat people.
Yeah, they're not in the rat race so much. They're thinking about the long term.
Yeah,
they're trying to build the cathedrals that they'll never see.
That is true. But it's so funny though, because like in 2020 or 2022, when the price is a lot lower, people would just look at me like I was a sucker because I wanted to work so hard. And now those same people are working twice as harder because they have to work so hard.
Yeah. That's what Bitcoin does. I mean, it gives you the cushion. It gives you a taste of what all these hedge funds get. Bitcoin outperformed all the hedge funds. You think the hedge fund guys are in the rat race? Maybe to some extent, maybe the younger guys are. But what happens there is they put the young guys through the ringer, and then they kind of chill out in their late 30s and just collect the returns. So imagine if you don't have to go through all that. All you need to do is buy Bitcoin through the Cash App and just be smart about not living within your means and just saving whatever you can in Bitcoin. Dude, like that's amazing.
Live way below your means for 5 years and then save, and then all of a sudden now your means have just exponentially increased by you just being a normal person.
Yeah.
That's
the coolest thing about Bitcoin, is that it gives you that opportunity and lets you focus on the things that matter, like family, friends, purpose, mission, God.
I'm making home improvements as a guy who drives a tricycle for a living. Like, that's cool.
That's awesome.
Like, I renovated I did my backyard as a result of, that's cool.
And you're being rewarded for busting your ass instead of just having, some hedge fund guy lap you. You're lapping him. It's
and I feel
funny,
motivated to want to work, to
know?
continue working because I see the actual tangible result from working.
Yeah, it's the ultimate revenge. I mean, you're the actual, the working man's the actual person that keeps this country going. We all know, part of the reason why people have such a jaded attitude is because they see how unfair it is that some guy moves some money around and gets rewarded for it. But now there's kind of the ultimate revenge where it's like, yeah, now you're outperforming him. It's entirely conceivable if Bitcoin continues doing what it's doing, you're going to be richer than these guys, and I don't think I'm ever going to be richer than a guy who manages a large hedge fund, but I'll have a richer quality of life. It's not just the money though. It's real wealth is what I'm talking about. Yeah, but I'm never going to have I wasn't buying Bitcoin in 2012 where that's going to happen, right? What's going to happen is I have the privilege of kind of being middle class on my own terms, which is amazing. Yeah, but I mean, project out in 10 years, I mean, I think it's entirely conceivable that Bitcoin has a 40% CAGR, and now you're looking at you are like an elite. That's entirely possible. It's possible if you stick to your guns and keep doing what you're doing. I think what happens though is that there's always cycles and there's always market behavior and there's all these other things, and for me it's just I have goals for this cycle because I think that taking profits and improving your life is always a good thing to do, even if you wind up with a little bit less Bitcoin in the long run. It's still good because it motivates you to continue doing the right thing. Yeah, that's my view, right? Totally. I don't think you should be selling Bitcoin to go buy a car. I think that's kind of retarded. But if you're selling it to improve your house, or if you're selling it to build a cash producing asset that can enable you to stack more in the future, and you find a price that you're comfortable doing it, and you understand market behavior, and you understand that drawdowns of a large magnitude always occur, right after these huge bull runs. And then you could kind of chill and use that cash to just stack more and do that and create a pattern of doing that. You could build a really nice life for yourself. I'll agree to some extent. I mean, it's complicated because of these crazy cycles, but 40% CAGR is really hard to beat. So I would say 40%. What's CAGR? Compounded annual growth rate. Yeah. So what's the meme? It's 3 green, blue, 1 red. Have you seen that? Yeah. So that's the meme, and it's even with the massive red one, you're still better off buying and holding Bitcoin. I mean, I think you should probably consider, where as you're going into the top, make those types of decisions, make those types of investments. That's the time to do it, is probably 6 to 12 months from now as you start considering that stuff. Yeah. But at the flip side is it's very hard to beat 40% CAGR. So whatever you do, you better do it hard, and you better make good decisions and really consider, is that what you want to spend your time on? That's true. And I think that also having an asset like this makes you so much more aware of current events, makes you so much more aware of finances, gives you a much broader understanding of what's actually happening in the news. You don't get, you're not going to get that just doing fiat, because there's less of a motivation. But owning something like Bitcoin, the way Bitcoin moves really is an indicator for what's happening in the world in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean, it soaks up the excess money. This entire economy is based on debt. They're based on 2% inflation forever. But the truth is, when they say 2% inflation, what really happens is 7% inflation. Yeah. They just keep dumping money in, and Bitcoin's monetizing in real time. No, it absolutely is, yeah. It absolutely is. And I think that the big decisions that you start making are, okay, well, what kind of forever life improvement am I going to make, as a result of this? Yeah. And there are a lot of forever life improvements that you get to make. Yeah, I mean, reward yourself for working hard in the bear markets, but also get yourself ready to work hard, extra hard in the next bear market. And as you said, produce cash flowing investments and keep your wife happy or keep whoever happy in your life. But at the same time, recognize that your work's not done. I would say if you're not in for at least 2 cycles, I should say probably even more, you should be stacking hard. You should be finding something that aligns with your purpose, but that also is productive and makes the not just what you like, but what other people are willing to pay for and what they like too. I think I'm doing that. Absolutely, that's what I respect about you, brother. Yeah, I think I've been doing that. I'm just talking out loud about kind of figuring out what my future is going to be with all that. Totally. Where do you see yourself going in the next 4 years?
Where do I see myself going? Hopefully I have a kid. Hopefully there's that. Are you talking about career-wise, or are you just talking about
career-wise, where you want to take things?
I mean, ideally, I want this to be like the #1 listened to podcast in America, right? Like, I want coming on Alex's Pedicab to be like an attraction that people do when they come here. Ideally, I'd like to have a 7-figure net worth where I can buy multiple cabs and give other people the same opportunity that I did to be able to grow and advance their position in life, just the way I was able to as a result of riding this tricycle. We still have a ways to go. I think that's probably a 5 or 10 year plan. To get to 7 figures, that's crazy, you know. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's not something that you don't want to gamble to get to that point. You know, if you do things the right way and stay calm, it's probably a 5 year. It could be a 5 to 10 year process depending on what you do. I want to do that. I want to be able to to just continue influencing our culture and influencing our thought process as human beings going forward. I want to be able to have a voice that I want to have a voice that people listen to. You know, I don't want to be somebody that just becomes associated and pigeonholed with like being a MAGA person or just being like some woke libtard who goes to meetings. You know what I mean? And like makes mockeries of different proceedings. Like eventually you want to evolve and be somebody that, you know, sits on panels and gets a chance to really like have long, interesting, thoughtful discussions about a multitude of issues. I think that's something I would really, really want to do. And, you know, maybe also get a bigger house. Maybe have a house by the lake. Maybe have a cold plunge in my house. Maybe be able to wake up in the morning, you pray, and then you go jump into a cold plunge immediately after immediately to start your day in your own house, having a cold plunge, or waking up, going outside and going fishing right away when you wake up. Like, that would be cool.
Sounds awesome.
Being able
who's your dream? Who are like 3 of your dream podcast guests?
Alex Jones. Yeah, Alex Jones would be one. Probably Shank from the Young Turks would be another one.
You went on his show, didn't you?
I did.
That was cool, man.
It was cool. I was. It was pretty surreal. Like I drive a tricycle for a living, and I'm talking to the Young Turks. Like as a grown-up. Like,
yeah, I respect him. You know,
I like him a lot.
He's pretty independent no matter what. I don't agree with him on all that stuff, but he's a sharp guy, and you gotta respect that. He was one of the first YouTubers to like really touch off like that.
Yeah, he's the man. I like Shane.
So that's 2. Who's your 3rd?
Oh, probably. You know what? Probably somebody like You know what? I want to have Kathy Wood.
Kathy Wood?
Yeah.
She was at the Commons not that long ago.
I know. I didn't get a chance to meet her, but Kathy Wood. I want to have Kathy.
You got to get in with the Nashville guys, the Nashville Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
You got to go on the road. You got to like bring your pedicab on the road and do it out there.
Does she live in Nashville?
I don't know, but I know that I think she does. Like she's in some group with Rod and the Bitcoin Park guys. So.
No shit. All right.
Yeah. So those are the guys to network with if you want to get a chance to speak with her. I don't know if it's a fit, but we'll see.
I think it's one of those things that takes time.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening now.
Yeah.
I think that happens 5 years from now.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a good 5-year time horizon. Like I wanted to go on Pomp's podcast.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to have Will Clemente or Dylan LeClaire talk to me. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think it'll happen.
Yeah. Dude, I mean Dylan LeClaire, like I think he either follows me or has like messaged me telling me that he likes some of my videos.
That would be awesome. Yeah, he's really smart. He's the wonderkin, right? He's like not that old, and
he's like 20 years old.
Yeah.
Well, so is like Will Clemente. They're both like kids.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know Will as well. I remember hearing Dylan speak like 5 years ago, and you're like, man, he's young, but he knows the hell he's talking about. Like that's impressive.
And well, what's crazy is that people like that he doesn't have a college degree. And people like that probably get bypassed for jobs left and right over some dickhead with a degree. And meanwhile, look at what you just passed up on.
Well, what is he doing? He's like running a meta planet. Like that's amazing. You know,
but isn't all he doing just like literally pressing the green? Like that's the thing too, which is funny about Bitcoin, is that like it is kind of like I get why people like say it's like for retards and for autists, because like I just feel like a broken record sounding like an autistic retard saying like, dude, just buy Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin. Just hit the green button. And that's all you're really doing is hitting the green button to just accumulate better assets.
It's so stupidly simple that it sounds like it shouldn't work because we're used to an financialized environment, but like this is the advice your grandparents gave you. Like my grandparents were fanatical savers, right? I'm sure yours were too. They lived through the Depression and they're like, just save friggin' money. And it's like, yeah, ironically, like that is the best strategy right now, is save in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. But because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, there's not very often that a new money arises like this.
No, and honestly, we actually have it better than the boomers. And people are like brainwashed into thinking that like these boomers had it so good because they bought their house for $1,000 and now look at how like pretty they're sitting. But I'm like, dude, we got a chance to buy like Bitcoin for nothing, and we're gonna have like just as nice of a house, if not a nicer house, with a much easier, happier quality of life. Our kids aren't gonna be hopped up on SSRIs. We're gonna actually have real relationships with our children. They're gonna like love us and want to be around us. Whereas these boomers just like became known as the first generation to hate their kids. Like, no, dude, we have it better than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, back to what we were saying earlier about wealth isn't money. It's the legacy you leave behind, the memories you make with your children. My parents are boomers. They buck the trend. They're very selfless. They're very generous people. They're very kind, smart people.
Yeah, no, so
I respect them a lot. There's a lot of their peers that are not like that, but they'll leave behind a great legacy and their peers won't. And that at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. It's not, it's the old joke, he who dies with the most toys wins. That's the most sad and pathetic thing I've ever heard. And they'll be remembered in history for that. People will probably piss on their graves for that, and
or they won't be
they kind of have it going.
Or they won't be
and as you
all.
point out, like the white pill is we have the massive opportunity of Bitcoin, and we have the opportunity of we were hardened by the great financial crisis and other stuff like that,
and
COVID. We were hardened by this stuff, and we'll be legends for coming out the other end better for it. So I ascribe to anti-fragility, to the idea that you gotta get your ass kicked to get stronger.
Yeah. I have like extreme levels of optimism about everything.
Yeah.
And there's so many people, especially like in my like conservative conspiracy right-wing like circles and stuff like that, that are just doomer black pillars. And I'm like, dude, do you not understand like where we are? Like things are going to be like, we are the first generation to have actual decentralized media. Like what we have now is the equivalent of the printing press being invented in the 1500s. Like, we're going to have we're going to experience a literal enlightenment within our lifetimes, and we're going to be the ones spearheading the enlightenment.
Yeah.
That's fucking
awesome. It's the hero's
awesome.
journey.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever follow the fourth turning? Like, they give different generation. You know what the fourth turning is?
I've heard it, but I want to hear it.
I don't know all the details, but it's like every 80 years or so, there's a massive change to society. So like the last two were like Lincoln, and then FDR would be the examples. We're kind of like due for a new one. Is Trump that person? I don't know. He's starting to look more like it. If you asked me that 8 years ago, I'd be like, hell no.
Yeah.
But it is looking like a huge transformation is going to be underway. And they give each because of their place in history, each generation in these four generation cycles get a nickname, and the millennials is the hero generation, and because they're a lot of the time they're the people that have to brave the storm. They're of age when they have to brave the storm of a huge change like what we might be going through right now.
But then what about Gen Z? Are they not the hero generation? Because
I think they're known as like the artist generation or something like that. I don't know exactly how that works. I probably shouldn't have brought this up because I don't know the book that well.
I've heard this before. There's like,
but what you're saying about our unique place in history, our opportunity to lead the charge of a new enlightenment like that, makes me think of hero's journey, hero generation.
Well, sometimes the hero generation can accomplish two generations, like the greatest generation and the silent generation both fought in World War II.
Yeah.
So you do have an encompassing of generalizations, right? Like, so you could have like millennials and Gen Z could be kind of clumped together to be heroes.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. I think millennials and Gen Z, and then like the generation after is what, like Zoomers or something? I don't even know, or whatever it is. Those seem like they could be the artists.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know all. It's like it was like Nomad is like Gen X would be like Nomad, which kind of fits them, right? They're the latchkey kids. That kind of makes sense. And you have like the Joe Rogans of the world, who you could argue are heroes in their own way, right? You have the millennial people. You like us, you have the Gen Z, and then you have the Boomers. And they all have their own unique place in history.
Yeah, it's true. What do you think about Trump's crypto reserve, crypto plans?
Yeah, I think this goes back to Gensler really should have made the distinction between commodities and securities. I think he tried and failed, which I'm amazed they failed to. But the truth is, like anything, Bitcoin has no leader. It has no one that can issue more stock. It makes absolutely no sense for an asset that can be issued at will by a corporation or foundation to be in a reserve. So they absolutely should not be in a commingled reserve with Bitcoin. If they want to pass their own crypto reserve that's separate from Bitcoin, I suppose that's their choice. But I think it really is essential we get an asset, a deflationary asset like Bitcoin, in the mix to help offset the debt and help our country, come out the other end of this debt crisis with a safety valve, with a brakes on this system. And if they choose not to do it, history will frown upon them. I think
they're going to do it.
They're going to do a Bitcoin reserve or a crypto reserve?
I don't think they're going to do a crypto reserve.
Yeah, I think there's people inside the government that are very vehemently against crypto but pro Bitcoin that are behind the scenes working on this.
I also think that this is kind of like a strategy a little bit, what they're doing. So I think it's twofold. I think in teasing the crypto reserve, Donald Trump did get a lot of VC money from crypto companies that were not Bitcoin. It's true. And David Sachs is a shitcoiner, and a lot of the people that are close to Donald Trump did get a lot of money from crypto and shitcoin companies. And even there's a book I'm reading called The Blockchain Revolution, where they're talking about the use case of different cryptocurrencies, which, hint, hint, there really is no use case. It's just a way to centralize the digital payments in the long run. But a lot of people in crypto gave a lot of money to Donald Trump, right? And so they are going to want their bags to get pumped. And so they're going to tease news. They're going to tease different narratives throughout the next few months in order to wind up doing that. There's more. So I think that is a possibility that could happen. I also think that if Donald Trump were smart, they wouldn't announce the Bitcoin reserve right away. Instead, they would be buying Bitcoin quietly for a few months on end to accumulate a stockpile, and then announce the Bitcoin reserve a few months into Trump's presidency, so that when the price does run up from this, we actually can pay off our debt and see a meaningful change in quality of life.
I think you're right about all that. I think here's another clever 5D chess move for you is, who's the third or fourth biggest holder of Bitcoin in the world?
Who?
So I'll give you the hints on the first three. I think is like the U.S., China, and then I think it's Great Britain. You know who's number 4?
No.
Ukraine. They hold 45K Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And we're paying their bills. So if I'm Mr. Dealmaker, one of the first things I'm saying is, okay, you want us to negotiate peace, hand over your Bitcoin. There you go. You got 45K Bitcoin right there. You got the ones that were seized, and now you're off to a good start. You at least got something.
You think Trump is that smart where he's going to play 5D chess and tell Zelensky to give
I think if people peer pressure him and just say, hey, Mr. Dealmaker, how are you getting swindled by the Ukraine government that's taking your money and stacking sats regardless? Like, that would be a smart way to do it because, as you point out, you don't want the price to run up while you're trying to acquire
while you're trying to acquire reserves,
acquire reserves. So one way to suppress that would be to just have them hand it over in a backroom deal somehow.
Yeah, but it's all.
It'd be even better if you did. It'd be even better if you did that, and people were watching those addresses and said, "Oh crap, they're selling," and it caused the run. It caused the price to go down, and then it gives you another buying opportunity. So not only do you take theirs, but that's what I would do if I was Mr. Dealmaker, extraordinaire.
Do you think the U.S. was doing that while Germany was selling?
I don't know. I doubt it, but it's possible. I mean, I don't think you had the people in government that were savvy enough to do something like that.
Maybe that's what they want you to think.
I think, could be.
Maybe that's what they want you to think. Maybe that was their role, is to just act like total patsies, so that they could accumulate a bunch of Bitcoin totally unsuspectingly, and then Trump comes in, and now it's like, oh, now we got the pump.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, I'm a Bitcoiner. Like, I don't I don't really expect the government to save me. What I don't want to see is total chaos in my country, and for people that I care about to get hurt in that chaos of a massive debt implosion. So I think one way to at least soften the blow would be to have a Bitcoin reserve.
I agree. I think it's a big thing. I think that it's going to do wonders for our country. I think it'll be good for a lot of I think it'll close the gap between wealthy and poor tremendously as a result of this, because anybody who owns like a tenth of a Bitcoin all of a sudden is middle class.
Yeah.
As a result of that, which creates an economic boom in and of itself. So yeah, I've never been this excited about a president, even though you should never be blinded by excitement and be like a sycophant. Just objectively speaking and looking at how the world is working and how markets are moving and who is who is managing the ship, so to speak. I'm kind of excited about I'm excited about who our president is, and I feel like I almost have this patriotic duty to help him do what a lot of people voted for him to do in whatever the best of my ability is.
Cool.
So
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at on that, you know?
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do at Cascader. We're trying to build, AI that is pro-human flourishing, pro-civil liberties. And that's why you should come check us out at pullthatupjamie.ai, named after Joe Rogan. We let you search the web, free of censorship, free of surveillance, and we got the fastest podcast search in the West. We only have 18 podcast feeds. We're going to increase that shortly. You can look up any podcast clip you need and share it instantly.
That's amazing. I'm really excited. And I really love how you're building this thing too, because if you wanted to, you could have like 50,000 followers on X, and you could be making you could be getting insane amounts of capital flowing into you. You could be on everybody's show, and you could have a huge platform. And the fact that you're taking your time with this kind of shows the ethos of Bitcoin. And this is why I'm so confident this is going to be such a good product when it's like fully finished.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And as you point out, that's what we were talking about earlier, the low time preference. I want to do it the right way. I want to do it, the way that, when I leave this earth, they'll say, he did it the right way. He, stood up for what he believed in, and he did his part to make the world 1% better,
Absolutely. All right, Jim, what are your, how do we get a hold of you?
You can follow us on Twitter, Cascader, CASCDR_, and you can also get at us on cascader.xyz, CASCDR.xyz, and you can also check out pullthatupjamie.ai, podcast search, web search, and adding more and more AI agents and productivity tools.
I love it. All right, dude, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.